US President Donald Trump has just landed in Davos, Switzerland, as his rhetoric over Greenland intensifies. European leaders have been firm in making their reservations known, but Trump has been doubling down. At a news conference before leaving Washington, he said he would have meetings on Greenland in Davos and was optimistic an agreement could eventually be made. Now, just a short while earlier, the NATO Secretary General spoke at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Mark Rutte says Europe would help defend the EU if needed. That statement intended to remind the American president that European nations are committed to Article 5 of NATO.
He said last night in his presser that he was doubtful whether the Europeans would come to the rescue if Article 5 would be triggered. I tell him, yes, they will. And they did on the 11th of September 9/11 in 2001, when for the first and only time Article 5 was triggered. I have no doubt the US will come to the rescue here, we will come to the rescue of the US, and we need each other for our collective protection.
We can now bring in our international affairs editor, Angela Diffley. Angela, good to see you. The White House says Donald Trump is going to keep his speech focused on the economy, but given that where things stand, what his rhetoric has been over the last few days when it comes to NATO expansionism, European delegates will be waiting to see what he has to say.
Yeah, we heard Mark Rutte there, that in response to Donald Trump before he left the White House yesterday, made this comment, we would come to the aid of our NATO allies, but I question whether they would come to help us. So Mark Rutte saying clearly, yes, we would. The fact is that in the past, Donald Trump has said not just of NATO, not just of his European allies, but pretty much of the whole world, we don't need them, they need us. This is his whole stance on everything. Mark Rutte is also, it looks, behind the scenes trying to offer some kind of off-ramp. There has been the suggestion that Trump misinterpreted the exercises in Greenland last week, where 8 countries sent very small numbers of military personnel to Greenland on a reconnaissance exercise to identify possible security gaps, but Trump chose to see that as an offensive, aggressive maneuver. And Russia has been trying to say, this was all a misunderstanding and give him some kind of off-ramp. But as we've said already, we don't even know why, what Trump's principal motivation is over Greenland. Is it about security? Is it about minerals? Is it about the fact he wants to expand a United States territory so that he might leave some sort of memorable legacy? What is it about? And so it's very difficult, of course, to counteract that, that being the situation at the moment. In terms of what NATO allies, and particularly these 8 countries that have been identified, might do to retaliate after Trump suggested that he would impose tariffs of 10% and possibly 25% as a punishment for them going to Greenland. The idea of using the EU trade bazooka, this big anti-coercion instrument, is gaining ground amongst European leaders, it seems. And that could have some significant impact on the United States. Donald Trump says, I would then hit back. We would always win. We're the bigger country. That may be the case. But in the meantime, this is a midterm election year for Donald Trump. Europe might be able to inflict significant damage to the United States economy, particularly in areas like the financial markets, and above all, if it hits out at tech industries. This is an election year in the US. It could get a bit more messy for Donald Trump. One other thing, he was asked before he left the White House, are you prepared to sacrifice NATO, to explode NATO, to collapse NATO in order to acquire Greenland? And he left it hanging. Ambiguity, as always. That is the Trump method.
Now, if you're engaged in a trade war with certain countries, if the US and Europe are engaged in a trade war going down the line over Greenland, are these two sides even allies anymore? He's essentially put the relationship on very shaky ground.
It has put the relationship on enormously shaky ground, and this will leave its mark. As to allies, friends, how friendly the relationship is, that depends on how each country has chosen to frame this, the terminology they've used, for the moment, whether Europe likes it or not, it's going to be a long time before Europe is independent militarily of the United States. And so whether Europe likes it or not, it has woken up to a big problem, but it will take it a long time to have a defense industry that will be able to allow it to be independent in terms of military terms. And so for the moment, Europe is forced to be an ally dependent on Trump. Then it comes down to language, and there are two camps, and the anger camp is growing. Emmanuel Macron has been particularly singled out. He's been regularly mocked by Trump. Yet again, yesterday, Trump said, about his peace board after Macron rejected the idea that France might take part. He said, look, nobody wanted him there. He's on borrowed time anyway. He's not going to be around for very long. He is routinely more than rude to Emmanuel Macron. There is a code about how international leaders behave towards each other, and he is flouting it on a daily basis. Scott Bessent as well said just today Denmark is irrelevant, and also sneered, was very disparaging about the European Union, which of course does move extremely slowly next to the United States. Donald Trump makes a decision, it happens. The European Union has to go through endless maneuvers for anything to happen. And Scott Bessent said recently, oh, I'm so scared. They've set up a working group. This attitude towards Europe, belittling it, disparaging it, will leave a mark. That said, Europe has made a decision that it is too dependent militarily, economically, in every way on the United States. It must wean itself off the United States, but it's going to take a long time. Look at this Mercosur deal, which has been years, decades in the making, and was more or less agreed upon. And now the European Union Parliament is to take it to Europe's highest court. It just shows how difficult it is for Europe to lumber towards a trade agreement with other countries. It's not it's an unwieldy beast, the European Union. It has enormous strengths, but that is one of its weaknesses. And so that is difficult. The other thing for the European Union is how much this is all about Trump and his personality and his desire to be the center of the world and his mercurial nature, his changing his mind. What does he mean all the time? To what extent is it just about Trump? To what extent does Europe need to completely rethink for the future its relationship with the United States?
And there you see it on your screens, the U.S. President Donald Trump's convoy in Davos as he heads to the World Economic Forum to address delegates there. This as European leaders across the continent are bracing for what the U.S. president has to say in his speech, which will focus, according to the White House, mainly on the U.S. economy, but obviously they will be paying close attention to what the U.S. president has to say when it comes to Greenland.